So I'm happy
Thank
to
you.
be back.
I'm glad that you decided to come back because it's always a pleasure to have returning guests, especially when the conversation is so good. So I was glad that you took me up on the invite and the offer.
Well, we're both happy. This is good.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I know that one of the things that seems to be going on around the world is like sometimes there's like a negative view of relationships and the dynamic between, let's say, two people who are trying to make it work, who maybe aren't as communicative as they should be, but you're looking for the
Right.
positivity, sorry, in the relationship. So tell us, what does that actually look like?
Well, I have learned to do that by understanding disbehavior styles and Springer guiding values. But the basis of everything I do in any relationship is to speak positive words about to myself, speak positive words to the other person, and to listen for positive words. And in any relationship, that gives you an idea of the possibilities for the relationship. I learned there are three groups of people in the world from a man called Rafe Esquith, excuse me, who taught fifth graders in Los Angeles in one of the poorest sections of Los Angeles. So these were mostly not white kids and they were in poor area, but he taught them Shakespeare. He would pick a Shakespeare play. They would spend the entire year learning about this play, reading the play, and then they would put on a performance. These kids got so good at what they were doing that they did performances at the US Supreme Court and the Globe Theatre in London, where Shakespeare put on his plays. I watched the documentary. I knew about this because I watched the documentary, the Hobart Shakespeareans. In the documentary, Rafe Esquith talks about how people have said to him, well, you're really good. You get all the kids to do everything together. And he said, no. In every single class he taught, there were three groups of kids: the kids who got what they were doing with Shakespeare, the kids who would never get what they were doing with Shakespeare, and the middle group who could go either way, depending upon how they felt invited. So he always treated everybody with respect and nicely, and he focused on inviting the middle group over to the gets it group, and then the group that would never get it never got it, but they couldn't cause much trouble because they were in the minority. So I've approached my life and I've told people about how to watch for the three groups of people in your life. And that's one of the important things about listening for positive words. People who are never going to get you or what you're doing are not going to say positive words to you. So you know that you shouldn't waste time trying to convince them, but you always treat them well. So bystanders can see that you're treating them well. And if an opportunity comes up, they could support you in any way that they can. You never know just by looking at someone what they could do for or against you in your life.
That's wise words because I can think of like so many situations where that would apply. So, for example, if I'm the type of person that I want to get into a relationship, but I've always surrounded myself with people that the common denominator is negativity,
Mhm.
I'm going to be prone to negativity because I'm around it every day and twice on Sunday, right? Right. Whereas if I'm going from the perspective of love, cherishment,
Right,
positivity, like these are very positive, strong words, right?
right.
Then that's going to be my baseline and I'm going to be able to tell the difference.
Mhm.
So I guess when you're looking at it from a positive mindset and positive words and these three groups, how does someone then determine which group they're in and how they can maybe move out of a group that's no longer serving them?
It's a lot of listening to what people are saying. I teach a course on gossip to help people understand good, bad, and ugly gossip. And when you understand what to listen for, then you know whom you can trust. Gossip is talk about people. It is not just bad talk, it is good talk. Good gossip creates connections between individuals and groups. And if you hear people saying good things about other people, you know they are someone you could probably trust and collaborate with. If someone's saying bad things about other people or horrible things about other people, bad or ugly gossip, you know they're probably not going to collaborate with you. And the people who say horrible things and sometimes make things up are probably backstabbers, if not to you, then to someone else. And so then you know to avoid them. Always treat them, always be polite to them so they can never accuse you of anything. And all the bystanders can see that you are doing things in a positive way.
Do you
So
think then some people who are trying to listen, they're not actually hearing what is being said, but they're hearing what they want to hear?
they hear what they want to hear. Yes. If they see someone as a beneficial relationship, they will ignore negative things to try to have a relationship with that person. They will ignore it and they will ignore what they say about other people. If someone says something negative about other people, they could certainly say something negative about you when you're not there. And I actually based a study in grad school on this. At the time, I had a 13-year-old daughter. My daughter was 13. She had friends, of course, who are the same age. And I called them friends A and B. And when friend A was over, they would sometimes say negative things about friend B. And when friend B was over, my daughter and friend B would sometimes say negative things about friend A. So what's the assumption when friend A and friend B are over or together? They said negative things about my daughter. So if somebody says something negative about anybody else, they could say something negative about you.
Do you think we miss that because we're naive in a way where we're like, well, they're not talking about me, they're just
Right.
talking about everybody else?
We think we're special. Yes, we think I'm too special. That we see or we want to see connections between us and the person who is saying the bad words. So we think because we have this connection, they won't say anything bad about me. But if they say anything bad about anyone, they'll say it about you if it suits them in a particular situation.
I'm looking at some of my former friends who, anytime we would go out to dinner or lunch, they would comment on someone that isn't there for a number of reasons. And many times I would sit back and I would just observe. I didn't really say much, especially towards the end of my disillusion of the friendship.
Mhm.
And I used to think to myself, and I was like, man, they're not even brave enough to say it to the person's face,
Right.
or they truly think this way, yet they will still either have that person around them or be around that person or try to extract something from them. And I always wondered, and maybe Paul, you can answer this for me. If people truly want to avoid negative people and yet always surround themselves with negative people, who's at fault? The person who's negative or the person who continues to surround themselves with negativity, knowing they don't want to be around negativity?
The person who surrounds themselves with negativity. That's your choice. You're making choices. That's not taking positive control in your life. Positive control is seeking out positive people in positive situations and taking positive actions.
So
That's
how
why,
would we
go
get
ahead.
them then to no? How would we get them to actually go after what they want then?
They might have to start with saying positive words to themselves. They might not think they deserve something better. You always start out saying positive words to yourself. And then it is easier to think that other people will say positive words to you. And when you say positive words to yourself, you give yourself permission to do all kinds of things. I I grew up without ever feeling the imposter syndrome because when I was 11 years old, I said something positive to the principal in my school. I went to an all well, I'll go to Catholic high school, but in elementary school, it was a Catholic school, and the principal was Sister Vianney at the time. She was there from fifth through eighth grades. And I said something positive to her one day. I have no idea what I said anymore because it was too long ago. She started having me come to her office for conversations. She was so enthralled with whatever I said that I went to her office and we had these conversations. And I remember having a wonderful time with her. This is the most powerful person in the school having equal conversations with me. I felt equal to her. So I have always felt equal to anybody in any room. And now that when I hear people talking about imposter syndrome, I say, anytime you go into a room, remind yourself that you are equal in humanity to every person in any room. So that starts the feeling of equality. You tell yourself, I'm equal to everyone, then you start to feel equal there, and you can start to feel equal in other ways. We are all equal in humanity. It does not matter who the other person is, you are equal in humanity to that other person.
And for those who are looking to maybe find their place and understand that they're equal, or that if they were to enter a room that they do belong there, I think that would come from within, right? And to your point, there's many people maybe who've had a difficult childhood where they always felt less than. So they surround themselves with people who are viewed as less than because maybe deep down they know if they strive to be accepted by better, they're not going to be able to measure up because they know that their worth has been so beaten down that they can't see any value in themselves, or maybe they don't see any value in changing the type of outcomes they're getting. What are your thoughts?
I think a lot of people are that way. They've been defined in their childhood as terrible. I had a terrible childhood, by the way. My mother tried to kill me twice, but my father loved me. And so I had his love. And then I had Sister Vianney. But so I was able to say positive things to myself because of my father and Sister Vianney. But you, you can start now, wherever you are in your life, whatever age you are, you say something positive to yourself every single day. I told this to a woman in Kenya, I think about 5 years ago. I had connected with a young woman in Kenya who I was on an African Facebook group, and I connected with a young woman who complained about gender stereotypes. And I offered to do a free workshop. I believe in giving people power in their own lives. You don't change the world by starting out to change the being world. Jesus, Muhammad didn't, Jesus didn't, Gandhi didn't, Mandela didn't, Malala did it. They all changed the lives of people around them, the small worlds of the people around them. So that's what I try to do. I try to change the small worlds of people around me. And this woman wrote about gender stereotypes at work. So I offered her a workshop that I was doing. It's now online, an online course, but I offered her a workshop and said, let's do this. And then we could have monthly meetings afterward to see how you're doing. So she agreed and she showed up for the online workshop and she brought a friend with her, a woman named Rebecca. She hadn't told me she was bringing a friend, she just brought a friend. But I said, okay, we did the workshop and we had the first meeting. And then at the next meeting, the original woman didn't come, but Rebecca came. And Rebecca said, I don't want to talk about work situations. I want to talk about personal stuff. So we talked about personal stuff. I gave her homework. I said, say one positive statement to yourself every day. A month later, we have our meeting, and she left a bad family situation with her mother, moved to Nairobi to live with her uncle, got herself a job, and got herself into school with a scholarship. All because she started saying one positive statement to herself every single day. That's the power of talking to yourself in positive ways.
What are some of the obstacles then that prevents people from saying positive things to themselves and continuing to go down the road of viewing themselves in a positive way?
There's all kinds of reasons. One is I experienced myself. I have no connection with any member of my family. After my father died, I eventually ended my relationships with my mother and my siblings because the only way I could stay in family relationships with them was to live the stereotypes they had created about me. So and I lived those stereotypes in some ways for decades before I finally decided to walk away. And so if you need your, I thought I needed my family. If you think you need your family, then that could stick you in a negative place just so that you can be with your family. So that's one possibility. Another is that society doesn't want certain groups to do any better than they think they should be. I see the world as I see a sacred world order in the world. That's my terminology. A sacred world order where there are three levels of people. There are people I call toxic czars, the top, who think that whatever they say is the truth. Then there are, in the middle, there are the menial monitors who, wanting to be like the top, monitor the people at the bottom so that the people at the bottom don't bother the people at the top. And then maybe the people at the top will notice them. And then the beasts of burden at the bottom who are supposed to carry all the pain of society. There are all those commercials and videos showing children in terrible situations in other countries, hungry, dying, with terrible medical problems. And I know there are people who watch those videos and think, oh, the world is as it should be because they're feeling the pain I don't want to feel. So there are people who don't want others to get out of painful situations. They want them to stay there because they think if they're feeling pain, I won't feel pain.
That's so dangerous because I know a few people like that where it's like if there's going to be suffering in the world, I want the suffering to be over there and not with me,
Right, right,
right?
right. Mm-hmm.
So how does my concern then is from like a relationship perspective, right? Let's say your different types of relationship you have. Let's say you're intimate, you're romantic, you're professional, you're personal, whatever type of relationship you have. If there's now someone that's out there that says that, you know what? There has to be suffering, but I want it to be Paula. Let Paula be the one that takes on all the suffering, right? Because I don't want it over here.
Right.
Now, when me in my arrogance gets into a relationship now and that person is suffering, how can I then be emotionally aware enough, emotionally connected enough to help that person either soothe, get through it, or resolve it if I'm going in there thinking you deserve it, regardless of what's going on, better you than me? How would that dynamic work in your opinion or not work?
It, well, the person who sees the other person as deserving as pain has to somehow see a connection between themselves and the other person that shows them that the other person's pain is harmful to them. That's the way I think it has to. It's hard to come up with examples of how people see that other people's pain is bad for them because there's so much pain going on in the world that people are purposefully continuing. But there, let me think of something that's not political. I don't like it. Oh, well, this is not a people situation, but there was there's some medical material. I forget the name of it now because I haven't. This is a blog post I wrote about freaky failure. There's 8 kinds of success and 8 kinds of failure. One is freaky. And freaky failure is when a failure elsewhere affects other people's lives on the other side of the world. And this one was about some fish that contributed some kind of medical substance that could be used in medical situations, and there was a decline in the fish population. So that meant difficulties for people on the other side of the world who needed the medical substance for themselves. So that's freaky failure, a failure of something else that affects you and you're not directly connected to it. So people would have to see that their own well-being is connected to the well-being of other people, and that people in pain affect their own lives negatively. The pain of the other people affects their lives.
Especially if they say that they care about this person, right? Because caring about someone is more than just saying it,
Right.
right? For the most part, we can say that, you know what? I'm a billionaire. Just because I say that I am doesn't mean that I am,
Right.
right? There's certain characteristics, certain behaviors that will define you being a billionaire. One of them is having $1 billion, right? As simple as it is, right? Just like another thing is like saying that, well, I'm an athlete. Yeah, I log into my video game and I play sports on my video game.
Right. That's
I'm an
ridiculous.
athlete,
Right.
right?
Right.
Right. So I think sometimes people have to understand that, hey, there's more to it than just saying it. You have to do it. So if you say that you care about someone, tell me the behaviors that you're doing to care about that person. If you tell me you're a positive person, right?
Right.
Tell me what you're doing to demonstrate you're a positive person. I think what has happened is that a lot of people have taken the sofa Christian approach
Yes.
where they sit
Right.
on their couch, and they're like, I'm a Christian.
Right.
Every holiday, I give my tidings. I don't ever leave my sofa.
Right.
You know, the TV evangelists, those days are gone. So they can't even watch the program on TV anymore, right? So at what point do people who are suffering say that I want better? I want more. Terrain, Paula, I don't know how to get these two things, but I want it in my soul because what I've surrounded myself with is not it.
Right.
I'm struggling here. But Paula and Terrain, if I remove myself from the chaos, the drama, the negativity in search of positivity, I'm going to have to do it alone. And I don't know if I could be alone. What are your thoughts?
There are extraordinarily difficult situations in the world where people cannot get out. Think about the slaves in the South, in the early part of this country. It was very, very difficult for them to get out. So there are situations where they can, and there's modern slavery where it's very difficult to get out. So there are situations where it's difficult. And I actually took a photograph, which I can't show you now, but I live next to a park, and in the park is an old merry-go-round, probably from the mid 19 maybe mid 1950 or earlier, even to be earlier. It's an old iron merry-go-round with a mesh that you see through as you spin. Well, underneath this merry-go-round are plants growing that can never grow to their full height because the merry-go-round cuts them off. The merry-go-round, as it spins, it cuts off the tops of these plants. If the merry-go-round never spun, the plants could come up through the mesh, but the merry-go-round spins, so it cuts them off, and they can't move. And unfortunately, there are situations like that for people in the world who can't move. So the best way to change that is to start with what Jesus, Muhammad, Mandela, change the small worlds of the people around you so they can change the small worlds of the people around them. And then you get to be world changing organizations or movements. It's not perfect. And I believe in karma because I've had a karma situation in my life. So I believe in karma, so things will come around. And I've to explain how karma came around in my life. When I was in my early 20s and stupid, I wrote a nasty letter to a woman who had been my roommate. Really, really, really nasty. And I even underlined some words to emphasize my nastiness. So I sent it to her. Our relationship never recovered. A year later, I dated a man briefly who made promises and then pretended he hadn't made promises. And he wrote me exactly the same letter. He said exactly the same things. He underlined exactly the same words. And so I learned that karma is real. And I've thought about how I treat other people ever since. I haven't been perfect about it. I have made mistakes, but I'm much more careful. So karma happens.
So let me ask you, Paul, as we close, if I were to give you three wishes,
Yeah.
right? What would you use them on when it comes to helping people to be more positive, view themselves positively, and surround themselves with positive people?
Well, I'm reading a book on networks and how networks affect us. So if I could, I would transport some people out of the negative networks into positive networks so that then they could have positive support. I remember I the Donahue show, if anybody remembers the Phil Donahue show, he had a boy on who had been a troublemaker in school, a teenager who had been in several schools because he was such a troublemaker. And then he had been a Boy Scout and he was in a public place where he saw another kid choking and he used the Heimlich maneuver and saved his life. It was written up in the newspaper. The school posted it on the bulletin board. People said positive things to him, and he changed completely because people were saying positive things to him. They weren't saying, "You're a troublemaker." They said, "You saved a kid's life." so, so I would transport people from a negative environment into a positive environment so that they could hear positive words. But I would also want them to take their own actions. That boy chose to save a life. He used the Heimlich maneuver because he knew it. So that would be another thing to give them skills, understanding and skills that they could use to take positive control. Using the Heimlich maneuver was taking positive control in a situation, and it worked out wonderfully well. Have I answered all your three? Okay.